"You're useless. Get out of my company." Richard Sterling's voice thundered through the office. "Are you deaf, Carter?" I said. "Get out." His face twisted in fury, veins pulsing in his neck. The room fell silent. Employees froze. Some stared at their desks, pretending not to hear. Others glanced at each other, their eyes flickering with unease. But a few smirked, enjoying the show. Malik Carter stood rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. His pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out everything but the humiliation burning in his chest. "I've done my job," he said, his voice firm but controlled. Richard scoffed. "Your job? You're useless. You never belonged here in the first place." Laughter rippled from a few corners of the room. Malik swallowed hard. Richard crossed his arms, tilting his head with a sneer. "I knew hiring someone like you was a mistake." Malik's stomach tightened. The weight of Richard's words crushed the air from his lungs. "You come in here acting like you're one of us, but you're not." Richard's voice dripped with condescension. "People like you don't have what it takes to succeed here." A low murmur spread through the room. Some employees looked down, pretending to be busy. Malik's fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to fight back, to scream the truth, but he knew Richard was waiting for him to snap. Richard's voice rose, ensuring everyone heard. "This is exactly why I don't trust your kind with real responsibility." A few employees shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. But no one spoke. No one stepped in. Malik's chest tightened, his breath came faster, but he forced himself to stay still, to stay calm. Then he saw them. Phones. A couple of employees were recording, capturing his humiliation. Richard smirked. "Maybe now the rest of you will understand why we don't lower our standards." A wave of heat rushed through Malik's body. His vision blurred, not from shame, but from something deeper, something stronger. Malik finally spoke, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I've done my job every day. I've worked twice as hard as anyone here." His jaw tightened. "This isn't fair." Richard laughed, shaking his head. "Oh, so now you have an attitude? That's exactly the problem, Carter." Malik took a step forward. "The problem isn't me." Richard's eyes darkened. "You just don't get it, do you? This isn't your place. It never was." A few employees turned away. Others stared, waiting for the moment Malik would break. Richard exhaled dramatically, then waved his hand. "I'm done wasting my time. Security. Get this disgrace out of my building." Malik's breath caught as two security guards stepped forward. "You can't be serious." Richard smirked. "Oh, I'm very serious." A heavy grip landed on Malik's arm. He yanked back, but the guards were stronger. "Let's go, Carter," one of them muttered. The humiliation felt unbearable. But Malik wasn't just humiliated, he was furious. A low buzz filled the room as Malik was dragged away. Some employees whispered in hushed voices, their expressions unreadable. A few, though, smirked, amused, entertained. Malik caught the gaze of a coworker he once trusted. They looked away. The betrayal stung more than the humiliation. As he was pulled toward the exit, Malik's fists tightened. This wasn't over. He would remember every face in that room, every word spoken. He would not forget. "You don't have to do this, Malik." His father's voice rang in his head. "You have a name that opens doors." But that was exactly why Malik Carter refused to use it. He wanted success on his own terms, not on the weight of his family's reputation. A man with ambition, he believed in the value of earning his place. Titles meant nothing. Integrity did. So instead of stepping into a cushy executive role, he picked up a mop. "Your worth isn't in your name. but in your actions. Malik could still hear his mother's voice, steady and unwavering. She had raised him alone, working double shifts to put food on the table. He had watched her endure, never complaining, never compromising. It was her resilience that shaped him, her dignity that fueled his determination. If she could fight through adversity, so could he. Sterling Enterprises gleamed with power and wealth. But Malik wasn't there to enjoy luxury. A janitor's uniform, a mop in his hands. This was where he had chosen to start. Not because he lacked ambition, but because he wanted to understand. What did it feel like to be invisible in corporate America? He needed to experience the struggle before he could change the system. As he pushed the mop across the marble floors, Malik wasn't just cleaning, he was observing. Boardroom conversations drifting through open doors, power dynamics in every interaction. He soaked it all in, mentally taking notes. One day, these halls would be his to walk as a leader. Not because of his name, but because of his knowledge. Sterling Enterprises is committed to diversity, the posters on the walls read. Yet Malik saw the truth in every interaction. Black employees sidelined, their ideas ignored. Promotions given to the same type of person over and over. The company boasted inclusion, but in reality, it was just another broken promise. For now, he stayed quiet, watching, waiting. The moment Malik walked into a room, he felt it. A slight pause in conversation. Eyes shifting away, smiles that never reached their eyes. He wasn't just another employee, he was an anomaly. He had seen it before, felt it before. The unspoken message, "You don't belong here." But they had no idea who they were dealing with. Malik stepped into the conference room, mop bucket in hand. The moment his eyes met Richard Sterling's, something shifted in the air. A flicker of disdain, a barely there sneer. Richard gave a dismissive nod, not a greeting. An acknowledgement of existence, nothing more. Malik had met men like him before. Cold, detached, certain of their superiority. But he shrugged it off. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to work. And Richard, just another CEO who wouldn't remember his name. "Hey, boy, you missed a spot." Malik froze. He turned slowly, his jaw tightening. Richard stood near the doorway, arms crossed, smirking. The word hit like a slap. Not Malik, not even Carter, just a boy, a test, a provocation. Malik exhaled, forcing his hands to stay at his sides. He'd learned long ago, anger wouldn't serve him here. "Yes, sir," he muttered, gripping the mop tighter. Richard chuckled. "That's more like it." The others took their time, laughing, scrolling through their phones, leaning on their mops. But Malik? Task after task landed on his shoulders. "Carter, do the bathrooms again," Richard called, voice dripping with fake politeness. "Wouldn't want the place to look unprofessional." Malik clenched his teeth. He had already cleaned them, twice. Yet here he was, scrubbing harder, working faster, while his white co-workers barely lifted a finger. When Malik caught Richard watching, there was something smug in his eyes, like he enjoyed watching him struggle. "You call this clean?" Richard's voice was sharp, loud enough for others to hear. Malik turned, confusion flickering across his face. The lobby floor gleamed, the windows sparkled. There was nothing out of place. Richard crouched, pointing at a barely visible smudge. "Unacceptable." He straightened, shaking his head. "Maybe this job is too much for you." Malik swallowed hard. He knew what this was. Not about cleaning, about control. Richard wasn't looking for mistakes. He was looking for an excuse. Malik wasn't supposed to hear it. "You see him?" Richard's voice carried from the break room. "Thinks hard work will take him places. People like him. Best they can hope for is scrubbing floors. A few awkward chuckles. Someone cleared their throat. No one objected. No one said, "That's not right." Malik's grip tightened around the mop handle. His mother's words echoed in his head. Your worth isn't in your name, but in your actions. He had to hold on to that, because right now the world feels small. Malik sat across from the HR rep, heart pounding. He laid it all out. Richard's insults, the extra work, the comments. The rep nodded, scribbling on a notepad. We take these concerns seriously. Days passed, then weeks, no calls, no updates, no changes. One afternoon he passed by HR. His file sat untouched on a cluttered desk. Malik's stomach sank. The message was clear. No one was coming to help him. Malik moved quickly, balancing a tray of coffee cups as he weaved through the crowded office. Just a few more steps, then it happened. A sharp shoulder brushed his and the tray wobbled. Hot liquid sloshed over the rim, spilling onto a senior executive's pristine suit. Silence. The man sucked in a sharp breath, staring at the spreading stain. I'm so sorry," Malik stammered, setting the tray down. "It was an accident." Then he saw Richard, striding toward him, jaw clenched, eyes dark with fury. Malik's stomach dropped. He already knew this wouldn't just be about coffee. Richard's voice sliced through the silence. "Are you kidding me?" His face twisted in disgust. "This is why we don't hire your kind for real jobs." A few gasps, a couple of hushed whispers, but no one spoke up. Malik felt the weight of every state. His skin burned, but not from the spilled coffee. This was something else. "I said I'm sorry." Malik tried again, voice steady despite the heat rising in his chest. "It was a mistake." Richard scoffed, stepping closer. "A mistake? Do you have any idea how much that suit costs?" The senior executive opened his mouth, but Richard didn't let him speak. His attention was locked on Malik, like a predator closing in. Around them, some employees fidgeted. Others held up their phones. Recording, watching, but not stopping it. Richard's hand shot forward, gripping Malik's uniform. In one swift motion, he yanked Malik's company badge from his chest. The plastic card snapped free, leaving a cold emptiness in its place. "Get out!" Richard hissed. Malik's breath caught. The badge wasn't just an ID. It was proof that he belonged here, that he earned this. Laughter rippled through the room. Not loud, but enough. A few hushed voices whispered. Someone smirked behind their computer screen. Malik's hands curled into fists. He could feel his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Richard held the badge up, inspecting it like it was worthless junk. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he tossed it onto the floor. "You should have known your place," Richard sneered. Malik met his eyes. "Hold them." For the first time, he saw what Richard wanted, to break him, to make him small. But he wouldn't give him that. Not now, not ever. Before Malik could respond, 2 security guards flanked him. "Come on," one muttered, no sympathy in his voice, just routine, just another day. Hands gripped his arms, pulling him toward the exit. His shoes scraped against the polished floor, the same floor he'd spent hours cleaning. The silence was suffocating. Employees watched, some with unease, others with indifference. A few turned away, pretending not to see. And then there was Richard, arms crossed, smirking like he'd just crushed an insect under his shoe. Malik's chest burned, but not with shame, not anymore. As they reached the door, he looked back. No one moved, no one spoke. They had all witnessed it, and still they did nothing. The doors slammed behind him. Malik stood outside, the cold air biting his skin. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper. Humiliation? Yes. Anger? Definitely. But beneath it all, a fire burned. This wasn't the end. He wasn't just going to walk away. Richard thought he had won. But Malik knew better. This wasn't over, not even close. Malik stepped outside, the cold air biting against his skin. His fists clenched, his breath heavy. They thought he would just disappear, that humiliation would send him running. They were wrong. His eyes lifted to the towering executive wing across the courtyard. Enough was enough. He turned, each step fueled by something stronger than anger, purpose. As he marched back toward the building, passing stunned employees, one thought echoed in his mind. They wanted him to be silent. They were about to learn who he really was. A murmur rippled through the office as Malik strode past the front desk. The janitor? Walking straight into executive territory? No one stopped him. No one dared. Because they didn't know, not Richard, not the employees watching. No one realized he was Robert Carter's son, the CEO's only child. Richard had spent years looking right through him, seeing only what he wanted to see. Malik had worked as a janitor under an alias, wanting to understand the company from the ground up. And now Richard's arrogance had blinded him to the biggest mistake of his career. Malik wasn't powerless. He never had been. And now, everyone was about to find out. The office wasn't the only place buzzing. Across social media, videos of the confrontation exploded. Richard's sneering face, Malik's silent humiliation, security dragging him out like a criminal. Justice for Malik climbed the trends. The internet was unforgiving. This is racism in the workplace. Fire Richard now. He was a janitor, but so what? No one deserves this. The company's PR team scrambled, but it was too late. Inside the building, whispers turned into murmurs. Murmurs into doubt. Richard wasn't as untouchable as he thought. Robert Carter barely looked up when the office door slammed open. "I assume you've seen the video," Malik said, voice steady but sharp. Robert frowned. "Malik, what? Watch it." The CEO's hand hovered over his mouse before clicking the link. Seconds passed, then minutes. The room filled with nothing but the hum of the screen. Robert's face shifted, from confusion to disbelief. Then something else. Quiet rage. "This happened in my company?" His voice was low, dangerous. Malik's jaw tightened. Yes, and if it weren't for social media, no one would have cared. Robert exhaled sharply, running a hand down his face. He wasn't just a CEO right now. He was a father, watching his son be torn down. And he knew one thing. Richard had made a fatal mistake. Robert didn't hesitate. He picked up his phone, voice cold. "Call an emergency executive meeting. Now." Malik watched, pulse steady. This was the shift. The moment where the tables turned. Richard had built his career on fear and unchecked power, but the foundation beneath him was already cracking, and he had no idea what was coming. Richard strolled into the boardroom, adjusting his cufflinks. Another meeting. Another chance to remind everyone who held the real power here. Then he saw him. Malik, seated beside Robert Carter. Richard's smirk twitched. His confidence wavered as he scanned the room. The board members weren't their usual relaxed selves. Conversations were hushed, expressions tense. "What's going on?" Richard asked, forcing a chuckle. Robert didn't respond. Instead, he leaned back, eyes cold. Richard swallowed. Something was off. Then Robert reached for the remote, his fingers steady. "Let's begin," the CEO said, voice unreadable. The screen flickered to life. And there he was, Richard, sneering, humiliating Malik, the office's stunned silence. The security guards dragged Malik out like a criminal. The video played on, the weight of every second crushing the room. Gasps escaped. A few board members shifted in their seats, some shaking their heads. Richard paled. This is out of context. Robert's stare didn't waver. Out of context? His voice was calm, but there was something lethal underneath. Explain, Richard. We're listening. Richard opened his mouth, then shut it. There was no explaining this. Robert didn't stop there. Click. Another file appeared. 2019, a discrimination complaint, swept under the rug. Click. 2021, another one, dismissed without investigation. Click, click, click. One after another, cases of Richard's misconduct filled the screen. The board sat frozen. Richard's voice wavered. You can't prove anything, it's all... Robert cut him off. We can prove it. We have proof. His eyes locked onto Richard's, and the world has seen the latest example firsthand. Richard's grip tightened on the table. For the first time, he wasn't the one in control. Silence stretched. Then Robert spoke. Richard, he said, voice even, you're fired. Richard shot up. You can't do this. The doors opened. 2 security guards stepped inside. Malik watched as Richard turned red with fury. I built this company, Richard spat. You destroyed your own legacy, Robert cut in. Now, leave. The guards moved in. Richard stumbled back, eyes darting to the board. But no one came to his defense. Defeated, he stormed out. Justice wasn't just delivered, it was witnessed. The room exhaled. Then Robert turned to Malik. I want you here, son, at the top. Name your position. Malik hesitated. The offer was tempting, but he shook his head. I want to earn it. Silence, then nods of respect. He had the opportunity, but he wanted the journey. And the boardroom, once filled with whispers and doubt, now looked at him with something new. Admiration. From the doorway, Malik's mother watched. Tears glistened in her eyes. Her son had faced injustice, stood his ground, and changed everything. Imagine standing in Malik's shoes, humiliated, undervalued, then discovering you had the power to turn the tables. What would you have done? Would you have walked away, letting injustice win, or would you have confronted the truth, knowing the risk? Malik made his choice, but what about you? Comment below. If you were in his position, how would you have reacted? Let's start a conversation. Your voice matters. Racism in the workplace isn't just a story, it's real. It happens every day, behind closed doors, in boardrooms and offices. Have you seen it firsthand? Have you spoken up? Or were you forced to stay silent? Share your experience in the comments. Let's create a space where real stories are heard, where real change begins. Your story could be the one that inspires someone to take a stand. This isn't just a video, it's a message, a reminder that silence allows discrimination to thrive. Like, comment, and most importantly, share. Let this story reach those who need to hear it. Together, we can make sure no one has to fight alone.